I know you hate the echo chamber, right? You hate it when there's too much consensus. You hate it when people talk about the same thing incessantly, and we could throw Brexit and a number of other things into that camp, Larry. So what I'd like to know is, in your opinion, as you survey the landscape, as you were just doing, what aren't people talking about enough? And when I say people, I'm talking about investors, I'm talking about corporate leaders, I'm talking about policymakers.
What are they not talking about enough?
Yes.
Well, let me just step back for a second. I love that people talk about all this stuff. So the reality is when I hear all this noise and confusion, that actually makes me more relaxed. So the fact, and this is the power of the press, though, Eric, when it's constantly discussed and maybe over-discussed, we find ways to mitigate. That's why when I read and listen to all this hysteria, the hysteria actually does a good job of mitigating the problem. Okay, and this is one thing that's
self-correcting mechanism?
It is a self-correcting mechanism. So what I spend most of my time on are what questions am I not being asked, what am I not listening to, what am I not reading about? And I would say the biggest issue, because it's is still retirement, but that's a much longer term issue. But the biggest issue, probably in the more intermediate period of time, is the U.S. deficits and the supply of U.S. Treasuries. Now, right now, as I said, you can't find any offers right now, so it's not a problem today. But we are having deficits as large as $1 trillion as far as we could see. You had the MSCI and the Bloomberg indexes now change the composition of the indexes more in favor to China in equities and in bonds, which means less global demand for U.S. products. As I said, at the same time we have these large deficits. And then more importantly, if there is a comprehensive trade agreement between the U.S. and China does indeed reduce its trade surplus with the United States, which is one of the main objectives, China does not need to then sterilize its currency by buying U.S. Treasuries. And so this is going to be a big issue, and no one is talking about that at all. China owns about $1.2, $1.3 trillion of U.S. Treasuries, which represents 5-ish% of our outstanding
stock
issue.
Of debt.
But if we have more, if we have a trade agreement that brings the trade deficits down or their surplus down, they don't need to own these treasuries.
So
anymore.
Are you saying a trade agreement with China is going to drive up treasury yields, or should?
Well, we'll see if that's the outcome. It will reduce their demand for U.S. treasuries.
Well, supply and demand being equal, if there's no other buyer for, is there I'll just ask the question, is there another buyer for treasuries?
Right now there's plenty of buyers. We're sitting at, a 270, whatever, 4, I haven't checked today. So you would say there's plenty of demand for U.S. Treasury. My worry about in the next few years as deficits persist, we're going to see more foreigners buying different, just because of the composition of the indexes. China, because of the trade surplus decline, there could be a moment in time where U.S. Treasuries have to go higher in yield because we have a supply problem. Is that 10 basis points? Is that 25 basis points? Is that 50? Is there a point in time where the supply of Treasuries become to satisfy the, to find the demand, let's assume, at a certain level? Does that mean Treasuries are too high and does that harm the economy?
So what you're telling me indirectly is modern monetary theory isn't going to take care of this problem.
Oh, that's I was going to say something I shouldn't say on television. That's garbage.
You're with Jay Powell on this one.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, raising taxes doesn't. Raising taxes does not help modern economic growth. And more importantly, yes, I'm a big believer that deficits do matter. I'm a big believer that deficits are going to be driving interest rates much higher, and it could drive it to an unsustainable level. Now, I did hear the theory is, in modern theory is about, until we see deficits harm, that will tell us deficits are too high. To me, as a parent, it's like watching your children have bad behaviors, and you just watch and watch and watch and watch until that behavior becomes monumental. I think that's not a good approach.